Welcome to Research Perch from the Massage Therapy Foundation. Short, practical insights into massage therapy research and how it can benefit your practice.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Research Perch. I'm Michael Reynolds, the chair of the marketing committee for the Massage Therapy Foundation, and we are glad you're here. We're glad you're back. We're glad you're listening and or watching. Here as always with Nikki Monk and Ruth Werner. Ruth, how are you? Having a great day?
I'm great. How are you?
Excellent, fantastic. And Nikki joining us from her office in Indianapolis. Having a good day?
Hey there, doing fine, thanks.
I'm just down. Well, actually, you're downtown. I'm on the north side here, and it looks like the weather's beautiful in Indy today. So I saw a little bit of sunshine from your window, so it's always nice to see in November.
Oh no, not from my window. That's a lamp. I live in a box.
Oh, okay.
I work in a cave, just like I like it.
Okay, well, it's a good lamp. It looks like sunshine. So hope that's good. So as you know, as a listener or a viewer of the Research Perch podcast, we unpack articles from the International Journal of Therapeutic Massage and Bodywork to help you understand what's going on in these articles, how they can help you in your practice, and how you can apply research into your world as a massage therapist. And again, that's from ijtmb.org. So today's article we're discussing is by Anthony Porcino, thank you. I got it right the second time. And it's the title is Exploring the Nature of Therapeutic Massage Bodywork Practice. So before we were talking, I admitted that I'm a little vague on kind of what the problem is here, because I read this headline and I'm like, okay, exploring the nature of therapeutic massage bodywork practice. That sounds very broad. It sounds huge. What does that really mean? So Ruth, I think you're going to kick us off here and kind of help us define the problem. Is that right?
I'll do my very best, and I know that Nikki will bail me out when I, dig myself too deeply into a hole here. So, what Dr. Porcino has identified here is that there's a certain body of research, a body of evidence about massage therapy, but there's not great agreement about what that really means, and that we don't, considering we're collecting a lot of data, we don't actually know very much about how practitioners view their work and their own practice. And so it can be difficult to be sure that research is conducted in such a way that it really applies. So this has to do with what we call translational research. In other words, making sure that what researchers study has something to do with the practical application of clinicians in the field, and that clinicians in the field can communicate with researchers about what they need to know. And so, I believe that what Dr. Porcino has begun to do here is just create a picture of massage therapy practice in Alberta, which, might look a little different from the United States, but I think our listeners will be surprised at how at the similarities that they would identify with. In order to, inform future research about massage therapy and inform future education about massage therapy, so that we can look at how people define themselves in their practice to come to some conclusions about that. Nikki, would you like to say more about that?
Well, I think for this particular article and sub-analysis study is coming out of a larger body of work that Dr. Porcino and colleagues are doing. And the initial study was on, they're looking at sub-analysis of interviews from comprehensive project on the training and practice of therapeutic massage and bodywork overall. This particular sub-analysis is looking at the particular question of those who integrate more than one technique at a time, and what that looks like and what that is. There's a lot of anecdotal discussion about the fact that there's a lot of blended therapies, and we use several different techniques within our practice. We kind of go in and out, but what does that mean, and how is that defined, and establishing the why fors and what's about it. In fact, they have a piece in their introduction of their article that says, instructional and research literature lacks a detailed description of experienced practitioners' process of practice, the why, how, and when of the assessment and therapy application choices occurring during practice, including influences on decision making. And so we know as practitioners that what we do and the decisions that we make are very complex and hard to really point our finger to. And so when we're trying to educate practitioners in how to do these sorts of integration of therapies, there's not a whole lot of education in that particularly, and this paper actually goes into a little bit more about that with their data and with their exploration of their analysis. Oh, shoot, and I just lost the other piece. I hate it when I do that.
No, but I'll pick up on that and say, as an educator, this is a really, really interesting article for me because we don't have very much information or thoughtful commentary on how to be good massage therapy educators. There's a real vacuum of good analysis of how to teach well. And one of the things that comes out of this paper is some repercussions on what this can mean for, to maximize the benefit of education for people, because they are educated, we are educated in categories, right? So this class teaches Swedish massage, and this class teaches shiatsu, and this class teaches cranial sacral work, and zero class teaches, here are some really great ways to combine these skills. That's left to the individual, and that's great. But are we missing something? Are we missing a boat? That's one of the questions that this paper asks.
And I just remember where my other place was going, and that is, and I know I sometimes just need some time to think about it, is the research application piece. And so the research that is being done on massage therapy, is it reflecting massage therapy as practiced? Well, we don't have any kind of concrete thing to point to say this is how massage therapy is practiced. And so the protocols that tend to be used in research are either very simplistic and very detailed in these are the steps in which you take to get X, Y, or Z. And well, we know that that's not how we practice, but then how do you account for the individualized pieces that massage practice is? And until there was something like this, that researchers who are developing study designs and treatment designs could point to say, this is how massage is actually practiced. It's a scientifically method-driven, qualitative methodly driven. We'll talk about that methodological piece here in just a moment. But it's a very valid way of collecting this sort of information and reporting it.
So we have talked here before about how important it is to study massage therapy as it is practiced.
Yes.
This paper has done something that really, as far as I know, no one else has tried to do, which is to begin to describe what that really means.
Yes. What is massage practice? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about the methods that they went through for this sub-analysis and for this study, and then we can talk about what their results were, because I think once we get to the results piece, we're going to talk about the two themes that came out of the data that they collected, and that's where the rest of our discussion will go. So like we mentioned, this is a qualitative study design, and so when you start looking at the numbers of the study, it becomes rather interesting. So at the time that this study occurred, there were 5,242 therapeutic massage and bodywork practitioners in Alberta, Canada. They sent out a big survey. They got quite a bit of response. And in that response, they had 791 who self-reported that they practiced 2 or more therapeutic massage and bodywork therapies. 283 of those people volunteered to participate in interviews. And in qualitative research, you have a series of questions. This is a semi-structured interview design. And so there's a point at which you could ask all 283 folks these questions, but it costs a lot of money to do that. And not just money, tangible monetary money, but also the cost of time and personnel and all these things, when really how much new information are you going to be getting? And so in qualitative work, there's this concept of saturation, this data saturation. And you do as many interviews as you need to do to get as much new information as possible. But then once you start hearing sort of the same sorts of answers and you're not getting new information, then you've reached saturation. and then you do the next steps of qualitative research. And in this case, you transcribe it word for word. You go all the way through all those transcripts. You do a coding, looking for different themes that are answering the particular questions that you have or that the study has. Does that seem appropriate? Did I hit all the highlights there, Ruth?
You did for me, but I want to check in with Michael.
Okay.
Well, I'll admit, I'm struggling with this one. This one is a bit abstract for me. So I think what I'm hearing, just to make sure I understand correctly, is the problem we're defining here is that there's no one defined way of practicing massage. Perhaps like other professions have, it's still a bit undefined, a bit unknown. Lots of questions, lots of different variations, and that's kind of what the challenge that's being set up here is, right? Did I hear that correctly?
It's hard to study it if it means something different for everybody who practices.
Got it.
Right.
And we've seen a lot. We've seen a lot of variations in what how different people define massage. Whether it's in a different setting, a spa setting, a medical setting, a chiropractor's office setting, sports setting. Lots of different contexts and lots of different modalities means that it's a lot of variation between how massage therapists practice. So I've seen that, and I think that's what we're talking about.
Right. Well, and I think the key piece here is that, but there's no established literature that highlights the fact that it's a very diverse field. It's a very complex piece. It's not just a simple one way of practicing.
Okay.
And
So
that's
that makes sense.
right. And
of course, my next question comes, and here's where dumb question time. I'm really good at the dumb questions here. Dumb question time.
I love you.
Why was that? Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask then, why was this article written? What is the end result? What is the conclusion we come to, and how does it help us then?
Okay, so let's back it up a little bit. So we know as a practice and as practitioners that the work that we do is very individualized and diverse and complex. Now,
and never the same 2 days in a row.
Right. And anecdotally, we know that and we accept that. But in order for that to be understood and accepted in other fields, we have to have something to point to that establishes that. So just for people to say, oh, this is the way it is, trust us.
Okay. So it's more about documenting that fact in a context that is relatable to other professions.
Yes, relatable to other professions, but is being collected in a systematic way and in a valid way to be able to point to and say, see, we did ask, see, we did this. We asked these questions. We did it by trying to get as much variability in response as we could, by getting as many points of view as we could. We continued to collect data until we reached a saturation point. We weren't getting new information. We had other opportunities to get more information, but we didn't need to go there. And so from this, they did all of their codings from the particular questions. And when you download the article, you can actually see the questions that the interviewees were asked. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Oh shoot! Of course, I should have had it already ready for that section. Oh, here we go. So in table 1, an example of the question is, how do you choose which treatments to use together? What are the influences on your decision to use one technique or therapy over another? So that was one question that everybody got to answer. What forms of feedback do you use? How do you know when you're done in a specific area or using a specific therapy or technique? So these were the kind of open-ended, semi-structured questions that folks were being asked. So once they collected all of this data, they did all the transcribing, they came up with 2 primary themes that the rest of the paper goes into some pretty deep discussion about. The first theme is that all treatments are individualized. Now here again, this is from us, from practitioners, but this has a really big implication on researchers who are trying to develop protocols to look at with the scientific method as much as possible.
And that look at massage as practiced.
Right. And so if
like the light bulb's going off for me now that you really described it that way.
Okay. So that's the first theme that they came up with. And there's actually several different discussion points that we can come back to around that. And then the second one is that each practitioner's practice of therapeutic massage and bodywork therapies evolves. That one, I think, is one of the more profound of the 2, and has the more implication, at least for me. And they talk about that this evolution comes from deliberate development of practice skills through experience and through further education.
And through spontaneous exploration. I loved that.
Yes. But also talking about that this isn't something that just happens immediately. So even it's something that after, in fact, one of the participants says, after thousands and thousands of bodies, I have figured out how to best integrate these several techniques and modalities together. And sure, I could separate them and just do individual techniques. However, because I have these other skills, it's really hard to separate. So for instance, somebody who is a craniosacral practitioner, once they have that sort of level of listening in their hands, they're going to have a hard time taking those listening hands away when they're doing trigger point therapy or when they're doing something else. They still have those listening hands, and so their practice is evolving. Not just the way that they're going between different techniques, but the whole way in which they're addressing and approaching their clients. Yes.
Yeah, and I think in the United States right now we're this is going to date this program. We're coming down on the end of 2014, and there's a lot of concern and there's a lot of discussion and conversation happening in our profession right now about continuing education and what it means and is it important and who should monitor it and who in the best of all possible worlds, the individual practitioners should make decisions about their continuing education and what's important to them to keep evolving in their skills. A study like this demonstrates just how critical that is, how much richness it brings to a person's abilities if they keep adding to their, they use the word toolkit, which is a word I grew up with in massage education. You add to your toolkit so that when you have a conundrum, you have more things to choose from to try and solve that puzzle. I think this is really, really pertinent because it's common sense things, but as Nikki says, it's the first time we've seen this in a really methodical and credible way, analyzed and documented and written down and published. And as I said at the beginning of our conversation here, there is so little research available right now about what's important in massage therapy education. I'm excited for anything that addresses some of those questions.
So going back to Michael, to your sort of so what with this article, this is information that we know as practitioners. We've touched on that a little bit, but I want to go to something that they actually state in their discussion. And they say that this study provides a basis for comparison of individual therapy and practitioner practices if needed. The broader purpose for developing this material is to have a clear and accurate published description of how practice in therapeutic massage and bodywork generally occurs. This can enable better development of TMB research by ensuring that relevant intrinsic features of clinical practice can be consistently considered throughout research design and analysis. So I think they say it really, really well. And then they go further in their discussion and talk more broadly about educational implications that Ruth has already started to touch on here. And in fact, they pull out 3 related educational concepts that can be proposed from the data that they developed. And so, Ruth, were you going to talk about this, or do you want me to
you're on a roll.
Real quick first. Okay, all right. So first was to train students to conscientiously reflect on how they are learning their skills and techniques and how to consistently deliberate on the results of their actions in practice.
In other words, does this work? What I'm doing right this minute, is this working?
Right. And if it's not, then being able to integrate into another technique to bring that in and do it in a
self-reflection was so important.
Yes. So second is discuss whether the therapy makes an effective foundational therapy that easily incorporates toolkit techniques or therapies, or whether it is best done in isolation and why. So that would be another piece to highlight with students. And then third is to discuss how, as practitioners, student might best learn to integrate other therapies, therapeutic massage and bodywork or other, into their own repertoires of techniques, or guard against undue influence or integration if that might be needed in a given clinical situation or desired by the therapist's body of practitioners. So one of the other pieces that I was sort of surprised didn't come out in this discussion piece is thinking about teacher selection and teacher specifications. So one of the pieces that were highlighted in the data that they talk about is this idea that really being able to develop this ability to integrate well and develop this sort of clinical reasoning takes a lot of time to do. And I know that in some areas, who is teaching massage therapy isn't necessarily highly regulated or highly specified. And I'm wondering if one of the reasons that this isn't being highlighted in base education programs is that maybe some of the folks that are teaching, and I'm not saying all, but if this is just something that's lacking in the training of those who are doing the training.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, and so so I'm going to tell a little story here, and it's kind of a sidetrack, but that I've realized it happened about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and I'm realizing that it really kind of ticked me off now. And after receiving a massage therapy session, a wonderful massage therapy session when I was on vacation, I started talking to this fellow about the work that he does, and he's telling me about all these fascinating things and saying, you really should write a case report. I'm the editor for this, and da-da-da-da. And he really sort of blew me off a little bit because he said, well, I'm a practitioner. This is what I do. And you know how teachers are. It's those who can't do, teach. And in the moment, it was just kind of like, well, okay. And as I've gotten further away from it, I'm thinking, okay.
Professor Monk.
Well, there's that. But this idea of, okay, so how are we teaching those who are coming along behind us? Do we have the people who are very introspectively understanding how they are integrating all of these different therapies and why they're doing this? Are they teaching the next generation, or how is that knowledge being passed down and through? So it just, so now I wish I could remember who that person was, because I can't remember anymore, just one of those vacation massages. But I'd love to go back and say, that pompousness is not good for the profession in general. And it really does provide some other limiting things. But yeah, there we go. I was thinking about that a lot lately, and now you can too.
Yeah.
Well, that would upset me as well, Nikki. Thanks for sharing. Well, like I said, I did have kind of a light bulb moment. This really helped quite a bit. At first, I was kind of like in the so what kind of context, like what's the problem here, what's going on. But the way you helped me understand is that I'm always looking for what's the practical application, what's the takeaway. I'm very practical and very action oriented. But really, this is not one of those articles where it's like, oh, take this thing away and use it in your practice, and here's the application right there, and turn that knob. And it's not really about that.
But it can be used that way from an educator standpoint.
Yeah, for educators, there's some meat here.
Yes.
More as
from a practitioner standpoint, in the moment in your practice, perhaps not, but certainly for education.
A necessary fundamental building block for the profession that is adding to the maturity of the profession. Is that kind of what I'm?
I like that. Adding to the maturity of the profession.
You are free to use it. Yeah, I think it does add to the maturity of the profession. And then there is some work to be done, I think, to help further the maturity of the profession. So I think it's
absolutely. Oh, absolutely. When I think there's a lot of different groups, and including this group that, and so here, let's go back to something that Ruth highlighted at the beginning. This is a research group from Canada, and we're looking at just Canadian practitioners. In fact, just Alberta.
From Alberta.
Okay, for Alberta practitioners. But I think that we could very easily expect that if we were to do this exact same study here in the States, we would likely come up with some of the same themes in this regard.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think that's definitely true.
Yeah. Yeah, great article. Very well done. I very much encourage folks, especially educators, to pull this down and really dig into it, share it with your students. And then also for those who are advocating and wanting to better inform research design, here's another excellent article to be able to help either bridge that gap to researchers who aren't being very informed by clinical practice or don't have a massage therapist on their team. This would be a nice bridge to get them there.
Oh, yeah, no, that's for sure. And I know we've really lingered on this one, Michael, but I have another point that I'd like to add. And
Go right ahead.
Probably conclude on that. One of the things that Nikki was talking about that they did quite nicely in this is that they made some recommendations for what should be identified in research about the massage therapists and about what they do. And I'm really happy to say that the Massage Therapy Foundation is working with the Samueli Institute. Part of our systematic review project that we're working on will involve the development of guidelines for what we feel is absolutely critical information that needs to appear in research about massage therapy. And this will cover things like how much training has the therapist had and in what fields, and some guidelines about how to report on the work that they do. And in that way, we'll end up, partly informed by Dr. Porcino's work, we'll end up with a body of research that has, something like a level playing field, because some of the unanswered questions, when you say, therapist got this result or that result, and you don't know what that word therapist means.
Who that therapist is, yeah.
It's time for us in the maturation of our profession to get used to reporting on those details so that we know where we're all starting from.
Oh, I appreciate that. No, go ahead, Nikki. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just good. Yes, very good point, Ruth.
Well, I'm glad you've, both of you have encouraged our listeners to download this article, and I want to kind of point out that it is going to be linked below this podcast on our blog. So if you're watching this, it's right below. Just take a look and click on it. You can download it there. If you're listening, you want to go to ijtmb.org, and let's see, what do we want to help you search on? Let's have them search on Porcino, Porcino. That's the author, Dr. Porcino, and you'll be able to find it there. Again, the title is Exploring the Nature of Therapeutic Massage Bodywork Practice. So it should be easy to find if you search ijtmb.org, and we encourage you to go get that. Absolutely. So, well, thank you both. This really helped. Again, I had a light bulb moment, so this really helped kind of walk me through a better understanding of this particular article. So I do want to wrap up by encouraging our listeners to remember that the programs for the Massage Therapy Foundation are supported by donors like you. We appreciate all support to the foundation. And kind of coming out at the end of the year here, we want to make sure that we put a call out to have everyone who's listening really consider just making, even if it's a small donation, maybe if it's $20, $25 as an individual, more if possible. Organizations are encouraged to sponsor and support as well. If you go to massagetherapyfoundation.org, the one thing I want you to do as a listener, do me a favor, do this. Go to massagetherapyfoundation.org, go to the homepage, and just scroll down to the bottom, and you'll see 6 or so programs listed there. And if you click on View More Programs, I'd love for you to just go through all the programs offered by the Massage Therapy Foundation. These are the programs that are made possible by support from our community. So there's a lot of stuff that the Massage Therapy Foundation does and offers to the community. So I think it's really important that we don't just make a blind call and say, oh, just donate because we want you to donate. Go look at the programs. If you see something there that resonates with you, that's a good reason for you to consider donating. So I'd really love for our listeners to take a moment and do that.
Oh, Michael, you're singing my song. I'd like to conclude this by saying that if every massage therapist in the United States gave the value of one massage per year to the foundation, we'd be granting in the millions of dollars.
Oh, my goodness. That's a dream world. We would love that.
It's a dream world, but it doesn't have to be that big of a dream.
Yeah.
So, one massage a year for value like Research Perch, it's a reasonable ask.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Well, we will end on that note. And again, just make sure that you do visit ijtmb.org and subscribe because those are the the articles and studies that go with this show. So we want to make sure you have that in context as well. So Thanks everyone so much for listening. Ruth, Nikki, thank you as always. Real pleasure talking with both of you. And again, to our audience, thanks for joining us. We love having you here with us. And please always send us questions, comment on the blog. You can send questions to Perch at massagetherapyfoundation.org as well. So thanks again. Have an awesome day, everyone. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Research Perch. Please send feedback or questions to perch@massagetherapyfoundation.org. See you next time.